Today's topic is exercise execution for max muscle growth. Okay. Um, of course, when we train, the goal of lifting weights, it is and should be to maximize muscle growth. Even if your goal might not be temporarily to grow muscle, even if you're trying to lean down, the goal is to maintain as much muscle as possible. And, that's basically the same thing as maximizing muscle growth. And obviously, we depend on different factors. So, of course, muscle growth is going to happen for different reasons. There is the nutrition part, there is the training part, and then there is an hormonal component to it. Today, we're just going to focus on the one that we can stimulate through training. So if we talk about muscle hypertrophy, so muscle gain, muscle hypertrophy occurs when the fibers of the muscles sustain damage or injury. So the reason that we lift weights is because we want to produce damage to the muscle fibers. Okay. So the body repairs damaged fibers by fusing them, which increases the mass and the size of the muscle. So this is just basic kind of a science, right? Anatomy of the muscle and how it grows. So if I go back, obviously, the muscle hypertrophy occurs when the fibers of the muscle sustain damage or injury. So that's the reason why we train. And then, of course, the body repairs it, increases the mass and the size of the muscle. Cool, perfect. Now, what do we need to take into consideration? So when we train, we are targeting certain muscles to stimulate growth, right? So each exercise will target, one muscle is impossible, but different muscles. And the way we're going to target these muscles is, well, as you can imagine, is important, right? And that's the reason why if you want to grow your chest, you do a bench press. If you want to grow your biceps, you do a bicep curl. So we need to target the muscle that we want to grow in order to stimulate it. And so there is two things that will make this happen, right? So how do you grow? How do you break the muscle down? There is two things that will influence this. One is volume and one is the muscle stimulation. So what is volume? Volume is the total amount of work we produce on a muscle. And to keep it simple, is basically sets time reps. This would be the total volume. So when you do a bench press, you do 3 sets of 10, basically you've done 30 reps of bench press, and this, will stimulate certain muscle growth. Now, without, the reason of this presentation is to focus on only certain part of, exercising or lifting weights. Obviously, there is the volume component. It can be part of another time. We talk about increasing volume over time and stuff like that, or how much volume you need. As you can imagine, in theory, doing 30 reps or doing 20 reps is better than doing 10, right? So it will stimulate more growth than doing 10. But we also need muscle stimulation, because muscle stimulation happens when we target a specific muscle by an exercise. That's why different exercises will target different muscles. And my question for you is, when you do a certain exercise, can you feel the muscle working? Can you feel the target muscle working? And trust me, I've been training for more than 10 years, right? probably like 15 years. I've been lifting weights for more than 15 years. And only in the recent years, I've been able to actually understand this at a deeper level. So, well, that's the reason of this presentation, right? I don't want you to take 15 years to learn what I learned in 15 years. I want you to understanding it, at least on a theoretical level. And then, of course, I want you to go to the gym or, even at home, given the circumstances. But I want you to go and experiment, right? And that's why I say, can you feel the muscle working? Because I don't care that you're doing a bench press and on the book he said that bench press is going to grow your chest. If you're not feeling your chest working during a bench press, what's the point? And then the volume concept is not even going to apply, because if you're, let's say, okay, I'm going to give you a specific scenario. I remember I used to do dumbbell bench press, and my idea was to target the chest. However, I was feeling my anterior delt, so the front of the shoulder, and I was feeling my triceps, but I wasn't feeling my chest at all. And this is one of the reasons why one day I was like, this doesn't make sense. So, volume. If I was going to do more of that exercise, was I going to be able to grow my chest? Even though on the book he says this is a chest exercise. Well, the reality is not. I wasn't, right? So that's why I needed to go back, analyze first the theory, and then go and apply and do mistakes and everything, right? And that's why now I'm able to teach this, and hopefully at the end of this presentation you can go and try yourself. So again, there is two things that we need to take into consideration, and is volume and the muscle stimulation. When we combine this together, we can grow muscles effectively. So in exercise, we define execution as the way we perform a movement or particular exercise and the stress the muscle is receiving. So I'm going to divide basically the way that we're going to produce the right volume and the right muscle stimulation into three things. So there is three things that we need to consider and we need to think about, and we need to perfection to make sure that we can get the right volume and the right muscle stimulation. And the first one is exercise execution, right? So again, is the way we perform a movement or a particular exercise. So a push-up, a pull-up, a squat, a lunge, a single arm dumbbell row. Each exercise is going to have a specific execution. So it's going to have a correct execution. And I'm sure that, you're going to be familiar with this concept, because, when you start going to the gym, you often worry about, okay, am I doing this right? So each exercise has a specific way that you should do it. And this, of course, is going to influence, from volume to muscle stimulation. So proper exercise execution. Why do we need it? Well, first of all, it creates a standard for movements. So again, going back to the volume function. If I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 reps, so it's 30 reps total. If the first 10 reps, I do bench press, let's say with my hands very close together. The next set, I do it with my hands wider. The first set, I do it, but I go with the bar up and down, whatever, wobbling or whatever. So as you can imagine, obviously, still I'm getting 30 reps in total, this is the volume, but each set of 10 has been different, right? So if you're not executing the exercise with the correct execution, obviously you don't create like a standard. But if I know, okay, so this is how I do the bench press, this is how I squat, and the goal is to make every rep look the same, okay? This is pretty much the reason why we do this. And so proper exercise execution is going to assure that we target a specific muscle, all right? So you're doing a bench press, but you're doing it in a wrong way, perhaps it's not going to target the chest, which is the muscle that you want to target. And the good thing is that a proper exercise execution is also going to prevent injuries, right? Which is also equally important. So again, one of my question is, can you feel the muscle working? This is my question to you, right? So you're doing a push-up, you want to grow your chest, right? Can you feel the chest working? Because although there is a proper exercise execution for each exercise, I still want you to target the muscle that you want to target. So you doing the exercise by the book or on paper, well, my question is, can you feel the muscle that you're trying to work? And this is a question that we keep repeating to you. Because again, it's not what you do, but how you do it that matters. And we're going to enter another concept here, which is tempo. Okay, so we had a look at the first one, which is exercise execution. Now let's have a look at tempo. So tempo in weight training is the rhythm at which you move a weight, including the rest time at the top of the lift and at the return of the weight to the starting position. So let me see if it is the next slide. So tempo, again, is the rhythm at which you move the weight up and down, right? Creates a standard for the movement, like exercise execution, right? It creates a standard because 10 reps fast are not the same as 10 reps slow. And you can easily try this, right? Maybe not now, but even if you want to do it now, you know, I'm not going to watch you anyway. You know, if you drop down on the floor and doing 10 push-ups, you do 10 push-ups fast versus 10 push-ups done very slow. Slow are going to be much harder. Why? Because by doing it slower, you increase the time under tension, which indirectly is going to increase the volume, right? So you see, we always go back to the same concepts. And this is why we actually need to, okay, set some reps. It's cool, but again, 10 reps, if I take 10 seconds doing 10 reps, it's not the same as me taking 50 seconds doing 10 reps. So this is actually how we manipulate the volume. And that's why tempo is important, because it creates a standard. So for example, this is probably one of my favorite tempo, especially now that I'm training at home and I don't have much weight available. And you read tempo like this: 4, 1, 2, 1. So the first number is the eccentric or the negative. So in this case, the 4 is the amount of seconds that I'm gonna take to go down. Now, going down, it depends on, you know, on the exercise. For example, if I'm doing a squat, yes, it's the time that I'm going down. If I'm doing a push-up, yes, it is the time that I'm going down. If I'm doing a chin-up, imagine that I'm starting from the top and I'm going down in 4 seconds. So again, yeah, it's the way down, negative or eccentric part of the movement, where basically on the muscle is when we have an eccentric contraction, which is basically almost like the passive contraction, right? It's not the active where the muscle shortens. The second number is the isometric and it's isometric at the bottom. So for example, if I'm doing a push-up, I'm gonna take 4 seconds to go down, and then the number 1 is gonna be my hold at the bottom. So isometric, hold at the bottom, that's the second number. Then the third number is going to be the concentric or the positive. That now this is where the target muscle is going to contract, is going to shorten. So it's the way up, right? So in a push-up, I'm pushing myself off the floor, and that would be the 2 in this case. And then the last number, the 1, is the fourth number is the isometric at the top. So once I'm up at the top of the push-up position with my arm straight, I'm gonna hold for 1 second, and this is going to be the fourth number. So again, a 4-1-2-1 tempo, 4 seconds on the way down, 1 second hold at the bottom, 2 seconds on the way up, 1 second at the top. So every rep is gonna look the same because I'm gonna keep this rhythm consistent, and that's how I create a standard. Plus, not also we create a standard, but we can also leverage certain portion of the lift to create a different stimulus. Again, if I'm asking you to do a push-up and I'm going to ask you to hold the bottom for 10 seconds, this is going to make the lift much harder, right? So through tempo, I can basically play around. So with the same movements, I can make it harder, I can make it easier, or I can just focus on different areas. So maybe on a push-up, if I want to have maybe a bit more targeting a bit more the tricep, maybe the hold I do at the top where the tricep is fully contracted. If I do at the bottom, the chest would be fully, well, almost fully stretched. So then, then I can create a different stimulus. So you see, basically, I can use tempo to create different stimulus. That's the idea that I want to come across, right? And then we have the third, how can I say? The third thing that I want you to think about and use to influence, obviously, muscle growth. And it is active range of motion. So obviously, imagine a muscle as a sort of an elastic band, right? So what we do when we work a muscle, we stretch the muscle and then we contract the muscle. So we lengthen it and we shorten it. Now, each exercise has a different strength curve. What does that mean? And you will understand this obviously when you do the exercise. But again, the bottom of a push-up is not as hard as the top of the push-up. So if I'm gonna only do the top half of the push-up, it's gonna be much easier than me doing only the half bottom of the push-up. So again, each exercise has a different strength curve. So some exercises will feel harder at the top, some will feel harder at the bottom. Okay? So we need to understand and feel, very important, we need to feel where the active range is, because we want to avoid spending time outside of the active range, because the muscle is doing work only when it's in the active range. There is not work happening in the if we are outside the active range of motion. So when we train, when we lift, we need to make sure that we keep the muscle into an active range of motion, because that's where the muscle is stimulated. Otherwise, we're just resting. When it comes down to range of motion, more is not better. Okay. So me going and trying to, for example, on a chest exercise, me try and go and stretch the chest as much as I can, but I lose my active range of motion. So I lose the tension on the muscle just because I want to stretch it. It's not the best thing to do, because again, we want to make sure that we have an active range of motion. That's when the muscle is stimulated. And very often, if we go too far with the range of motion, So we're getting a huge range of motion, but it's not active. We actually relying on the joints, on the tendons, which are basically, they do not contract, and they only have this elastic ability. So for example, yeah, the chest is, I think, is the easiest to understand. You open up your arms to the side, you will stretch your chest, right? Now, if you got weights in your hand, let's say you're doing a dumbbell fly, it will be very easy for you to lose the tension, but keep stretching your chest further and further and further. And obviously, the heavier the weight, the more you can stretch it. But if there is no active range at that level, it's useless. So more is not better. So, for example, as I said, the bottom of the squat is harder than the top, right? So if you only perform the top half of a squat, you're not really getting, the max benefit from it, right? And the bottom of a push-up, again, is harder than the top of a push-up. So same thing here, you only doing the half top of the movement, it's not going to get the same benefits, the same results. And like a chin-up is harder at the top, right? When your chin is over the bar is on your chest. If you hang from the bar, you can hang, not forever, but for a long time, while at the top it's harder to hold it. So we need to understand, where the exercise has the active range of motion, because we want to double down on that, basically. So the secret is to combine proper execution, tempo, and active range of motion. And this is basically a recipe, right, for you to understand, okay, how can I make each exercise, each rep more effective towards muscle growth? So obviously, this is the theory, lots of words, but the only way that it's going to be effective is if you go and practice it, right? And I like to call this mindful training. So instead of doing, the exercise for the sake of it, I want you to go and be mindful. Like, okay, where do I feel it? Do I feel it more at the top? Do I feel it more at the bottom? Am I going too fast? Am I bouncing? Am I going too far into the stretching? All this stuff that we talk about. Now you have to go and feel it yourself. Be mindful next time you train. So next time you train, I want you to go there and feel, okay? Just feel whatever, anything you've been doing. I don't want you to change it yet. Just feel. Feel. Where do you feel it? This is gonna pay dividends into your, the way that the effectiveness of what you do. So again, I'm a big believer in, it's not what you do, but how you do it. So me telling you, you want to grow your chest, you need to do more bench press, is going to mean nothing if we don't have this in place, if we don't have a correct exercise execution in place. If we are not executing with a tempo, right? Because we need that standard. So we need the standard of exercise execution. We need the standard of the tempo so we can make, each rep look the same. And then we need to understand the active range of motion. So, it doesn't matter what exercise you're gonna execute, you understanding where the muscle is in an active range of motion is gonna increase the amount of work that you're gonna put on the muscle, right? Because the end goal is to stimulate the given muscle. And then once we have all these in place, exercise execution, tempo, and the active range of motion, then we can create a standard and we can start talking about, okay, now we need volume. That's it. That's simple as that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and see you soon.